To Kill a Mockingbird is a book that you are either forced to read in school or you knew people who had to read in school. I fit into the latter category. My brother Violist had to read this for school during his sophomore year. I had no intention to read the book until I started Masters of Literature because, well, the purpose of Masters of Literature is to help you guys understand the books you likely have to read for school and get you some good ideas for that 5-page paper you have to write on said book. Well, I don't want to go too deep into my overall thoughts on the book yet, but I will say this. The age recommendation I'd give for this one is 15 and up. There's a lot of stuff contained within the book that might not sit well for young children. Plus, the book takes place in the 1930s in Alabama, so the book is riddled with southern slang of the time. Okay, enough prefacing, let's get to the summary. The story takes place in the fictional town of Macomb, Alabama. Jean Louise, Scout, and her brother Jem live with their father Atticus, who is a well-known lawyer who always aims to do what's right. Jem and Scout also have a good friend named Dill. Dill is new in town and stays with his aunt every summer. Now during this particular summer, Jem tells Dill stories about one of their neighbors who won't come out. They call him Boo Radley. He's basically the town ghost story. The rumors are that he tried to kill his own family and will shoot anyone who dares come on his property. So of course, them being kids, they decide to play around and try to see if they can get Boo Radley to come out. That is until Atticus tells them not to, as it's rude to go bothering someone who just wants to stay in his home. Now, after the summer has ended, Scout has to start school and of course ends up getting into a few fights. Some of them were to defend her father. Now, why is Atticus being made fun of by the children? He's a respectable man and an excellent lawyer. But the reason why the townspeople and their children are against Atticus is because Atticus is taking on a case to defend a black man, Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson is accused of forcing himself on and taking advantage of Mayella Ewell, the daughter of Bob Ewell. The majority of the townspeople, of course, believe that Tom Robinson is guilty of the crime. Now, see, here's the interesting thing. Later in the book, Scout finds out that there was a specific reason Atticus was called to this job. It's because he's the only lawyer who would actually do his job and defend Tom Robinson. So, of course, Atticus does what any lawyer would do. He gathers all the evidence he can to save Tom. Now, while Atticus is out doing that, Scout and Jem discover that the tree near the Radley place has a little hollow in it, and it's full of little gifts. Now, these gifts were little trinkets like sticks of chewing gum and other such things. One gift was 2 little soap dolls carved to look like Scout and Jem. Neither of them know who's leaving it out, and they don't find out since the tree has now been filled with concrete, but, you know, I think we both know who left those gifts in there. Now, the entire story spans throughout the years 1933 to 1935, so of course a lot of stuff has happened. I won't go into detail with most of them, but I'll give quick little summaries of what happened. Atticus' sister Alexandra is now living with them to give Scout and Jem more of a feminine influence, even though they argue that Calpurnia, their cook, is good enough for them. And at one point, when Atticus was away, Calpurnia offers to take Scout and Jem to her church, since the kids can't really go out by themselves. Now, Calpurnia is black, so she has to go to the church designated for the black people of the town, since segregation is still very much a thing in the 1930s. And while there, Scout and Jem get to know the Reverend Sykes, and this is important for later. Alexandra was upset with the children for going to the black people church, and I'm sure if she had her way, she would have fired Calpurnia. Also, Dell is now staying with the Finch family since he didn't want to go back to his aunt's house. Alright now, one night Atticus came home and a group of people were at their house. These people did not agree with Atticus's actions. Now, Jem assumed that these people were going to try to hurt Atticus, so he drove them away by saying the phone was ringing. Because, you know, you gotta draw attention and have witnesses in order to drive people away. The people did leave, but Atticus explained that they knew the people he was talking to and they didn't want to hurt him. Well, fast forward a while, and another night, Atticus is waiting outside the county jail where Tom was moved for safety. The kids are worried about Atticus and find him there. However, a mob has formed in front of the jail. Now, this mob wanted to lynch Tom. They were asking Atticus to move. Now, Scout thought that she knew those people, but most of them were complete strangers except for one man. Now, one thing you should know about mobs, they can get a change of heart quickly if enough people rile them up. Scout was trying to defuse the situation by telling that one man that she knows his son and to tell him she said hello. Now, this did defuse the situation and the mob left. Sometimes all it takes is a friendly reminder of our own families and if they'd be proud of our actions. Now let's get to the part you've all been anxiously waiting for. The trial. Now, I should make one thing clear. The entire story is from the first-person perspective of Scout. Now, how did Scout see the trial? Well, she knew Atticus would never permit his children in a trial, so Jem, Scout, and Dill snuck over to the courthouse to go see it. Since the front area was full, they find Reverend Sykes, the reverend they met at Calpurnia's church, and the kids go up with him to sit in the balcony where all the black people were sitting, since, again, segregation was very much a thing back in the 1930s. The kids had come late to the trial, so they missed some of the opening stuff, but it is revealed later that some of the people from the mob the night before wanted Tom acquitted. The part where the kids come in is when Atticus is talking to Sheriff Tate. The story that Mr. Tate, Bob Ewell, and Mayella Ewell give is that Tom beat Mayella and took advantage of her. Atticus, of course, finds many contradictions in those testimonies. He does agree that Mayella was beaten, but not by Tom. The tip is that Mayella was beaten along the right side of her face. Now, this would be our left, if facing her. Atticus points out that Tom cannot use his left hand as he got caught in a cotton gin when he was 12. Now, Tom's story of the event is much different. While Mayella says this is the only time she told Tom to help her out, Tom says she asked for him to help her out many times. It was usually outdoor stuff like chopping wood or gathering kindlings, since they didn't really have heaters back then. Tom only did it because no one else would help Mayella. The only time Tom went in the house was to do a job he thought Mayella wanted him to do, but he says she tried to kiss him, and it was when her dad came back that he booked it and ran. But he says the last thing he heard Mr. Ewell say was that he was going to kill Mayella for kissing a black man. Now, Atticus points out that Bob is left-handed. I think you all see where this is going. Atticus has found tons of evidence that Tom didn't do it, but Tom is still given the guilty verdict. However, there is a small win. Bob Ewell doesn't have credibility anymore. Now, later on, there's been a lot of talk going on about how weird things have been happening to people related to the case, including the death of Tom Robinson. The story was they tried to escape from prison but was shot. Now, it's around Halloween, and Scout and Jem are at a little town fair to celebrate. Scout had to play a ham in a pageant that night, but she couldn't get her dress on and forgot her shoes. As it was late, Jem just decided to take Scout home. As they are walking, they are attacked by Bob Ewell. Scout couldn't see anything on account of it being really dark, and she could hardly see anything in her costume. Jem did try to protect Scout, but was knocked out in the scuffle. While Mr. Ewell tried to grab Scout, someone else came to her rescue, and Mr. Ewell was killed. That someone else had picked up Jem and carried him home, with Scout following behind. Now, Mr. Tate comes by after being called and said he saw Mr. Ewell dead. He had fallen on his own knife. Atticus and Mr. Tate ask Scout what happened, and Scout recounts the tale the best she can and sees that the someone who had saved her and her brother was still there. Arthur, Boo Radley, was still at the house as he had taken Jem back home. Their lives were saved by Boo Radley. Scout takes Mr. Radley home, and when she gets back to her own home, Atticus spends the night reading to her. And that's where the story ends. Now, let's quickly get to the analysis. The biggest theme that me and other people got out of this book was not everyone is who they appear to be, and people come in all shapes and colors. While they may appear different to the eye, they are still human beings and should be treated as such. Now, to the eyes of the townspeople, and remember, this is the 1930s, so there were very different stereotypes for black people than there are today. So to the eyes of the townspeople, Tom Robinson, to them, was the same as every other black man, violent and untrustworthy. The man had a wife and kids and just wanted to help people the best way he could. Even his employer stood up for him during the trial, but his employer was dismissed. Honestly, that trial was a load of crap. I'm just gonna be real. Now, Arthur Radley stayed inside his house all the time, and that started the rumors, but in reality, he probably didn't like being around other people. That didn't stop him from being a kind man and saving the lives of 2 children. Atticus even says himself that you don't really know a person until you put yourself in their position. Everyone has their own issues and problems. That girl in your class who reads all the time instead of socializing with others probably prefers the comfort of a story rather than conversing with another person. Now, there's a part where Alexandra is teaching Scout how to be a proper young woman, and Scout is confused by all these rules that women have to follow, and she should be right to question how this is all done. Now, another theme I caught is that in every situation, there's always a way to awaken humanity in someone. Take the scene with the mob, for example. Scout diffused the situation by reminding everyone in that crowd that they have families to go home to. It reminds me of a side quest to Majora's Mask. With this particular side quest, you need the couple's mask from the Anjou and Cafe quest. What you have to do is enter the mayor's office where a meeting is going on about whether they should work on getting the townspeople to safety or keep preparing for the carnival. If you talk to anyone while wearing the couple's mask, everyone in the room will remember their families. The meeting will be adjourned immediately. A lot of you can guess my favorite character is Atticus. He does the right thing when everyone seems against him. He knows that a man's life is on the line, and he doesn't want the man to be punished for a crime he didn't commit. Even though most of the townspeople are against him, he still does his job and does the best that he can do to get this man declared innocent. I could go over even more themes, but that would likely be a video on its own. Overall, this is a very well-written story, and I strongly recommend everyone read it at least once or twice in their lifetime. I enjoyed reading this book, and I'm glad that schools are telling students to read it. They should! It's a good reminder that while the world can be a very scary place, you can still find good people. There's actually another book tied to Kill a Mockingbird called Go Set a Watchman, which is agreed to be the first draft of To Kill a Mockingbird. This story contains the same characters, but it takes place in the 1950s. I haven't read that one yet, but I heard it's pretty good. Anyways, I can't stress this enough. Go read the book and watch the movie if you can. The movie is actually a solid adaptation and was released a couple years after the book was published. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, and hopefully you've got some ideas for your paper ready to go. Happy reading!